Hey guys, so I know, long time no see. I don't think I've posted a video since my July TBR, and that's going back a couple weeks. But I don't really have a good reason for this absence. I do have so many videos that I want to film. I just can't seem to find the time to sit down and film them. And then whenever I do have time off from work, it is like 40 degrees as it is today. It is so hot and I don't have air conditioning where I live, so I just have a fan and it's still really hot in my room. So yeah, that's not a good excuse, but sometimes it is just too hot to sit in front of the window with the sun pouring in. So I choose to spend the time reading instead, if that makes it any better. But today I thought it'd be good, since we're a little over halfway through the year and I'm a little bit over halfway through my reading challenge, to share with you some of my favorite books that I've read so far this year. So in this list I didn't include anything that was a reread for me, because I've been finishing so many series. I have reread a lot of books, but I didn't include any of these because it wasn't my first time and it wasn't my first experience. So I think I have 7 here to show you, so let's get right into it. Just a quick disclaimer, I do want to say that none of these books are in order of most to least favorite. They are just in the order I pulled them off my shelf and I'm choosing to talk about them. So the first 2 that I want to talk about are ones that I don't yet own a copy of. I did love them, and obviously since they're on my favorites list, and I do plan on purchasing a copy of them, but they are quite expensive right now, so I'm just waiting for some of the sales to come through. But the first one was actually the first book that I read this year, and that is Honor Girl by Maggie Thrash. So this is a graphic memoir depicting Maggie when she was 14 years old, as she's going to I believe it was a pretty religious all-girls summer camp. And while she's at this camp, she goes on a journey, both at the camp and within herself, kind of discovering her sexuality and how she may be different from other people, and the pros and cons of that, and how she can face that and come to terms with it. And it was just such a well done story told through a graphic novel, and I think that's a really good way of getting that story across. The art, I wish I had it with me. It was so beautiful. It was simplistic, but it did everything that it needed to do, and I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I do want to buy a copy just so I can have it on my shelf for myself, because I know it is something that I'm going to flip through many times. And like I said, I read it over 7 months ago and I haven't stopped thinking about it. So for that reason, it is on my favorites list. And then the second one that I want to talk about is The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman. So again, I wish I owned this one because the artwork in it was so beautiful. But this is more of a short story, kind of combining 2 fairy tales and throwing in like the classic artwork and everything into it, but it was so well done. So like I said, this is a story that weaves 2 classic fairy tales, Snow White and Sleeping Beauty, but it was done in a way where reading it you can feel like these 2 princesses did actually collide. So they both stay true to the original roots of the story, but then add this new element that brings them both together. And I thought the writing was done really well. I've had a couple of issues with Neil Gaiman in the past. I thought Coraline was okay, and I ended up DNFing the Graveyard book. So I was really excited to actually enjoy this one, and it makes me want to continue on with his other writing. So I was very impressed and pleasantly surprised, so it made my list. This next book I didn't even have to think twice about putting on this list. Bad Blood by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I don't even know what to say about this novel. It was everything. So this is the 4th and final book in the Natural series, and it took me so long to read, and I know that it's because I was afraid to see the series end. Even as soon as I finished it, I wanted to pick it back up again. As soon as I read the last sentence and closed the book, I wanted to pick up the first book in the series just so I could relive this world all over again. So for that reason, this book had to be on this list. The writing, the characters, everything is so well developed over the 4 novels. You grow with the characters and their experiences, and everything they've been through reflects in their personalities, and so much thought went into these, and you can feel that when you're reading, and for me that just brings a whole new appreciation to it. So yeah, easily one of my favorites, and it is still one of my favorite series of all time. So I'm sure you're all sick of hearing me talk about it, so just go read it and then we can all gush about it together. Have Courage, Be Kind, The Tale of Cinderella by Brittany Cando. This is the classic story of Cinderella, who is one of my favorite Disney princesses. The Little Mermaid is still my favorite, but this was just perfect. So she tells the regular story of Cinderella, adding in pictures. So sometimes we have the dual page or just the single page illustrations, but they were quite often throughout the novel, and each illustration added something to what was currently going on. So I really enjoyed that. I thought the artwork was really well done. But as well, in this novel, she kind of added little details to things. So she threw in another meeting of Ella and the prince, and just little things that made the story so much whole and added up like all these little ends, and it was just so well done, and I can't even think of the words to explain it. So if you love Disney, I think this is worth the read, and it's really pretty, so I'm happy to have it on my shelf. And yeah, I have nothing bad to say about this, obviously. The You I've Never Known by Ellen Hopkins. I also wanted to add Smoke to this list, the sequel to Burned, because I loved it. But I thought if I could only pick one from this author, which would I pick? And I ended up choosing this one. So in the story, we follow a young teenager named Ariel who is living with her dad because her mother has left, and she is trying to discover her sexuality. She is in love with her best friend, who is a girl, but then this guy moves in, or is like a family friend or something, I can't quite remember that detail, and she's head over heels for him. So there is a lot of drama and there is a lot of angst, but it was so well done and it was so believable, and then there were so many twists in here, and the way the story tied together I called right away just from reading the synopsis, but it was still done in a way that broke my heart. All of her novels are heartbreaking, but this one I was quite satisfied with the ending, and I thought she did justice to all of the characters. And then if you've read this book and you've read the author's note, then you would know that Ellen Hopkins went through a similar situation in her own life, and that's where a lot of the inspiration for this novel came from. And when I was reading it, I couldn't figure out how she made it feel so real, and I was so envious of her writing ability to do that. So then when I read that note, it kind of clicked, and I went, wow, she really poured herself into this novel, and it showed. So it is one of my favorites, and probably one that I will reread. It is heavy, but it's on the lighter side, because most of her novels deal with drugs and alcohol and mental illness. This one is kind of like just a real world problem that isn't so extreme, and so I think it would be a good one to start with if you're hesitant. I really enjoyed it, and like I said, would probably be my first one to recommend if you are new to this author. City of Ashes by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Mortal Instruments series, and it was my first time reading it. If you've been watching my wrap-ups, then you'll know that I'm currently reading through this series with my friend Keisha. We are on the third book right now, but this one I enjoyed so much more than the first. So I enjoyed the first book, and even though it was a reread, if it wasn't, I wouldn't have included it on my favorites because I thought it was okay. This one just blew me out of the water. Because I was so okay with the first one, I think that lowered my expectations a little bit. But the world gets so much more developed and the characters get more well-rounded, and although they're young and they make mistakes, they still have the drive and the ambition that makes them seem more adult, and they're really good at adapting to their environments and the situations that they're put in. And the writing is just so eloquent and detailed. Yeah, it was just really good. And again, like Cinderella, it had me in tears at one point. I had to take a break from reading because I couldn't see through all of the blurred tears. So because of that, I might end up really enjoying this series. I've heard it kind of goes down a little bit until you get to the Infernal Devices, so I'm really excited to read those next. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised and one of my favorites. And then the last book on this list is one of my more recent reads, One of Us is Lying by Karen McManus. If you watched my wrap-up, you'll know how much I loved this book, and yes, it is seriously one of my favorite books that I've read this year, if not as long as I can remember within my last couple years on BookTube. It was just so good. So again, it is a new release. I'm not sure if it's a debut novel from this author or not. I actually believe it was, which really surprised me because of how well-rounded her writing was and like how developed it was. But we follow 4 teenagers who are being investigated for the murder of a classmate who died while they were all in detention with him. So we get each of their 4 perspectives, which I really enjoyed. I feel like in a mystery, it is really important to get those perspectives so that you can kind of get inside their heads and see if they're hiding something or if something seems a little bit off. But yeah, I thought I knew, and then I was like, no, and then I guessed the twist, but that didn't ruin the experience for me in any way, and usually when I can see the big twist coming, it just blows it for me. But because it was revealed more at the end and there was a lot more development into it and there were more sides to the story than what I'd originally thought, I ended up really enjoying it. Again, there was a lot of thought and a lot of detail put into this novel, which I really appreciate. and I think I read it in just a couple of sittings, but it still had the same impact on me. So if you haven't read it yet, I've seen a lot of people talking about getting it, having it on their wish list or hauling it. Totally read it. It is so worth the read. It won't take you long at all. And I've been recommending it to people in my real life because I enjoyed it so much, and I think it's something that everybody could find a bit of themselves in the character in, and I think that just adds a whole other element to the story. So yeah, I could go on and on and on about all of these books. So I try to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. But yeah, these are my favorite books of the year. I still get excited talking about them, even though some of them I read as long as 6-7 months ago. So I only plan to pick 10 books at the end of the year with maybe a couple honorable mentions. So maybe a couple of these are gonna get bumped. I don't know. I loved all of them so far. So I don't know, maybe I'll read some good books or maybe I won't. I don't know. Thank you guys so much for watching. In the comments, make sure you let me know what some of your favorite books have been this year. I'm always looking for more recommendations. And yeah, I'm sorry about the hiatus. I will be filming some more. I have a book haul to do and my wrap up and everything will be coming. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.